Hi, you're here with Miss B for episode 6 of For Crying Out Loud. This time, we're going to be examining floods. Floods occur for some of these reasons. Heavy rains from a storm, a river can overflow, a broken dam or a levee, a tsunami, too much saturation in the ground, or even a spring snowmelt. Most floods develop pretty slowly, and humans will have time to evacuate. However, some of the kinds of floods there are can also occur in a matter of seconds, like when there's an extensive rainfall or a dam break, and then there's little or no warning for humans. Experts classify floods according to the likelihood of them occurring in a specific time period. So they give them these crazy names, like 100-year flood. What a 100-year flood is an extremely large and destructive event that has the probability or the chance of occurring once every 100 years. So it makes it kind of rare. A 10-year flood would be a smaller flooding event. It wouldn't be as intense, and it would have the chance of occurring once every 10 years. Now, that doesn't mean that it can only happen every 100 years or only happen every 10 years. What it really does mean is that it's the probability that that kind of flood happens in a year. 100-year floods are the really destructive, destroy everything in its path, tear everything up kind of floods. That's a 100-year flood. And that kind of flood has a 1 in 100 chance that it could happen on any given year. So a 10-year flood, which is not as catastrophic, but it still is going to cause a little bit of damage, it's going to have a 1 in 10 chance or a 10% chance of having a 10-year flood. Now a 1-year flood, that's going to have a 100% chance of happening every year. That's going to be more like annual floods, like places like Hines Drive closes down every spring because it has those annual or 1-year floods. This infographic will show you the kind of risk that you're taking if you live somewhere that has a tendency for 100-year floods. You can see that over 30 years, you have a 26% chance of one of those catastrophic floods. In your lifetime, you have a 55% chance. And happening twice in a lifetime, you have a 14% chance of that happening on any given year. Now, there's 4 major types of floods that occur. The first one is a coastal flood. There's urban floods, flash floods, and river floods. Coastal floods happen on the coast of a large body of water, like an ocean coast, or the coast of a large inland sea, or one of the Great Lakes. On the coast of an ocean, tropical cyclones or a hurricane, tsunamis, tidal waves, those damage coastal barricades and buildings when they do come on shore. On the coast of one of the Great Lakes, that's going to happen from one of the storms. So you can see in this picture, this is from the Japanese tsunami that we studied back when we were still in school, and you can see the water coming over the barricades, and this would be coastal flooding. This is what it's going to look like right on the coast. Everything's going to get flooded out as the water from the ocean makes its way in. When a hurricane or a cyclone makes landfall, this is what is going to happen. All that wind and all the waves are going to get pushed ashore, and as they get pushed ashore, they're going to bring all the water with it. So you can see this is what the aftermath would be. A lot of these houses built on the beach have structures underneath them or stilts to elevate them to make there be less damage. And this is a picture from Hurricane Sandy in New Jersey in 2012. You can see where all of the storm surge came in right through here, and it flooded everything on the coast. This is a picture from Hurricane Harvey in 2017. The city of Houston in Texas is very, very far inland, but the hurricane was so intense that you can actually see the flooding in the neighborhoods from that. Now, urban floods happen in large cities. It's because the rainwater has nowhere to go. The concrete and the cement can't soak up water, so there's nowhere for the water to run off to. It runs into the street drains, but they can get overwhelmed very quickly. So the water runs at high speed across the ground. In 2014, on August 12th, there was one of the most historic floods in the Metro Detroit area. Most communities got about 5 inches of rain over a 36-hour period, and the flooding was tremendous. At one point at 6 p.m., the rain was coming down at 1.25 inches per hour. So you can see this is a picture of 96, the expressway, right off of Newburgh. And this was the aftermath of that storm. So you can see how flooded the expressway was because the drainage system could not keep up with the flow of water. This is 696, and you can see all of the cars that got trapped in there. This is at the Southfield Freeway and Outer Drive, and you'll notice that that overpass is 14 feet 2 inches tall, and the water is almost at that point. Finally, this is a last piece where you can see somebody that tried to drive through the floodwaters. It stalls your car out, and then they become trapped. Now, the most common kind of flood is a river flood. Those happen the most often, usually in the springtime, usually because of rain or snowmelt. Extreme river floods can carry water ranging from 10 to 20 feet high. That can happen very fast and without warning. And that usually happens because of some kind of natural blockage in the river, maybe a man-made blockage like a dam. It could be a glacier, a landslide, anything that releases a huge, immense volume of water. So in the wintertime in Michigan, you get this thing called ice damming. When the rivers start to defrost, all the ice starts to break up on the river, and it gets clogged because all of the pieces kind of chunk up together. The water pressure builds behind it, and when it finally lets go, it sends a pretty big torrent of water flying down. So you can see this is a close-up of what those chunks of ice look like when they get caught up on bridges and things like that. And they can end up coming ashore. These happen to be some vacation houses on the river in Mecosta Township, Michigan, and I put a little map for you so you know where that is. And you can see what happens when the river does let loose, when enough pressure builds behind these ice dams. Now, a little more recently, as recent as last week, there was 2 dam failures. One was the Edenville Dam. You can see this is in Edenville, Michigan. And this is the Sanford Dam in near Midland. And that was last Tuesday, May 19th. And you can see that the dams became completely overwhelmed and failed. So this is the town of Midland. And with that dam failure, this is what came rushing through the town last Tuesday. And you can see right here, you have houses that are underwater, and this is whole neighborhoods. You can even see how deep it is, just gauging it by the stop sign. And that can be from a river flood when you've held back all the river and the dam actually fails. Now, the most dangerous kind of flood is a flash flood. Flash floods are like a flash mob. They happen unexpectedly and out of nowhere. They come without warning, and they cause the most flood deaths because you get caught in the fast-moving water and you can't get out. They can happen anywhere, anytime, any place on earth, and they can even happen in the desert. So you can see this is the Desert Wash in Las Vegas. It's right outside of Las Vegas proper. And when the spring rains come, the ground is so dry that it works like asphalt and it can't soak up any of the rain. So all of that pouring rain comes pouring out of the desert and into downtown Las Vegas. And it floods pretty badly, pretty quickly. This is Ellicott City, Maryland in 2018. You can see it was raining for days, and these are all buildings in their downtown, and it's already flooded almost through the whole first floor from a flash flood because it's been raining and it just comes so quickly. Now, moving water is far more dangerous than people think. 2 feet of floodwater can push a house, a tree, even large vehicles away. 2 feet is about up to your knees. So water up to your knees can move a whole house, even a vehicle like a semi-truck. 6 inches of water, so the distance between the tip of your middle finger to just below your wrist, that's enough to knock you off your feet and actually sweep you away. So here's a picture. You can see of somebody caught in these raging floodwaters. If you get caught, not only are you in danger, but you endanger other people like rescue workers who are trying to get you. You can see that they've put this rope farther ahead on the river to hopefully get this man out. This is floodwaters that have picked up and turned over a semi. So it's powerful enough to knock over an entire truck. And again, they can pick up whole houses and buildings off of their foundations and move them. Almost 100 people in the U.S. die every year due to flooding. And mostly, they happen in their cars. So 66% of all deaths from flooding happen in a vehicle. And that's because drivers make the deadly mistake of trying to drive through floodwaters. So you can see in this picture, those cars tried to drive through it, figuring, oh, it wasn't that deep, when in actuality, it stalls your motor to your car, and then you're trapped. And as the rain rises around you and the water gets deeper, you're trapped in your car and you can't go anywhere. So the rule of thumb from FEMA, the mitigation group of the government, is turn around, don't drown. If you remember that, never to drive through it, never to walk through it, you'll be safe during flooding. So, flood watches and warnings. You get the announcements when there's going to be a flood watch or there's a flood warning because the rain is falling 1 or more inches an hour, or it's raining steadily for 3 days in a row, or a cyclone or hurricane or tsunami is going to make landfall, or when local rivers have breached their banks, or a combination of any of these things. So after a flood, stay away from all the floodwater. I know it looks like a lot of fun to go out there and play around in the water, swim in it, and everything else. The problem is all of the street drains contain sewage, and it has mixed with all of that rainwater, and now that's what you're walking through. It's got all kinds of things like feces and bacteria and all kinds of nasty things you do not want infecting you, along with other toxic chemicals that may be on the roadway or even in the storm drain. Also, the surface of the road, the sidewalk, the ground, all of it is going to be much weakened from all of that water. So it's not going to be very stable underneath your feet. And there could be gas leaks and fallen electrical wires. Water and electricity do not mix. If there's a fallen electrical wire and you walk near it in the water, you will be electrocuted. So, floods are unstoppable, but there are a few ways to mitigate or lessen it. You can build some coastal walls and barriers. It'll slow down the movement of the waves as they approach the shore on the ocean. So it can, slow down a hurricane, storm surge, or a tsunami. It won't stop it, but it can slow it down. Structures in all cities should be constructed to avoid blockage of waterways. So they shouldn't be trying to block off waterways for neighborhoods because it's going to eventually flood. Buildings on the shorelines should always have stilts or some kind of elevation, be it higher ground. If you plant trees or grasses or shrubs, even rock retaining walls can help to reduce soil erosion. So every time the waves are pounding that part, it's not eroding everything away. And you can build a retention basin or a reservoir that connects to the waterways or is off to the side, and they fill up when the floodwaters come in, and they can store it until it can be drained. So if there's nothing else you learned from this lesson, I need you to remember to never walk or drive through floodwaters ever. If you go into Google Classroom, there is a Google Forms for you to answer some questions for some extra points. I'll be talking to you soon. Have a good night. Bye-bye.